Jason Moulton, welcome to Listening with Leaders. You are one of the most interesting guys I've had an opportunity to talk to on the show in quite a while. You are the director of winemaking and viticulture at a winery in Napa called Whitehall Lane Winery, and you guys grow, you've got 200 acres of your own grapes, and you bottle about 50,000 cases a year of wine. So it's pretty good sized winery, not exactly tiny.
Yeah, I refer to it as a medium-sized luxury winery.
There you go. There you go. Well, welcome to the show. First of all, let's start off. Your background is really interesting. Tell us a little bit, my audience, those that are listening, give us a brief history of your background, starting from growing up in Illinois and ultimately making it to Napa Valley.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Well, yes. So I was born and raised in Illinois. My folks are in the medical profession. Cardiology and electrophysiology is their study and background. And my father actually moved all over the United States, Oklahoma, North Carolina, with residency jobs or just getting better training around the country. And so, yeah, basically grew up between North Carolina, Oklahoma, and Illinois. And now I settled in California. And in the process, lots of schooling in between all of that, specifically Southern Illinois University. So I'm a Saluki. If you're familiar with the Salukis, it's Southern Illinois, Carbondale. And ended up doing my postgraduate work in viticulture and enology over in Christchurch, New Zealand at Lincoln University. So that's kind of where I really got my wine focus on an education level.
And then you've worked all over the world before you landed in Napa.
Yes. So fast forwarding, a lot of my focus, my original focus, I started the industry in Illinois. I started working with what we call American varietals and hybrids, French hybrids. And so emerging out of the Illinois wine industry, I had to transition and start working with Vitis vinifera, which is basically the premium grape stock that the world uses, more than just Illinois varieties. And so I moved to Canada, studied in Canada at a satellite school through University of British Columbia. Went to Corbel, if you know the sparkling house over in Russian River.
Right.
Did an internship there in the lab and got this postgraduate position, or not position, but a postgraduate degree down in New Zealand, worked a couple harvests in New Zealand. And I started to see the fastest way to get this experience and accelerate growth and education ultimately was to do reverse harvest. So I did 2 in New Zealand, I did 2 in Bordeaux, I did 1 in South Africa. And at some point I had to grow up and say, I can't do this forever. And I was 27, around 27 years old. And I wanted to land in Napa. That it's essentially was the goal. And so I targeted Rutherford and ended up here. And I'm here right now, like literally I'm in Rutherford. And that was the goal all along back in 2007.
So tell us about the winery you worked for, Whitehall Lane.
So Whitehall Lane was established in 1979. The family that owns it right now, they are the Leonardini family. Great family to work for. A lot of people don't get the opportunity to work with families. There's a family element in leadership at wineries, and then there's the corporatocracy. And so, getting to work with the family, getting to actually talk to the owners and get what you need from them in terms of guidance and leadership is important. Whereas if you're in the corporate world, maybe you don't get that. They have the final say as the owners, and having that connection, that personal touch with them, I think it goes a long way.
So you've been at this for a while now, and you've been at Whitehall for how many years?
Well, I just finished the 8th harvest here.
It's been a while.
So
what is it that gets you up and get you excited in the morning?
You know what? Every day is different. I think that's what drives me in this industry. Every day is a different day. You're doing a different process. You have people who do different things in the vineyard. They do different things in the winery to keep everything going. I mean, we're dealing with farming. It's a perishable product here in the winery, and we have to take care of it. My greatest example of that was during COVID. we were considered essential workers because it's agriculture and it's perishable, and we just kept on going. And so wine, thank God, is essential and to everyone.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what gets you really excited is the fact that there's just so much variety in the kind of stuff you have to do every day. And I mean, you're managing both the winemaking operation, which is substantial, and you got 200 acres of grapes to worry about.
Right.
That's a lot.
Right. So it definitely involves a lot of systems creation, multitasking, and just keeping your eye on the prize. It's a very dynamic job, and it's not for the faint-hearted for sure. And you just have to pay attention at all steps of the way. So yeah, the details are immense, but as long as you don't get bogged down in details and you can make decisions, like I think that's where people have the greatest success. In fact, I tell people during harvest, we're making on average 1,000, maybe 2,000 decisions a week on how we make a wine, how we call a wine, how we might adjust a wine as it comes in. And so, yeah, there's all these really critical decisions. And then we're training people on how to navigate the harvest and do the right thing, be sanitary in the process. And because we're fighting microbes at all angles in this business as well. Like I said, it's perishable, it's prone to oxidation, you have spoilage yeast, you have bacteria. So kind of in a paranoia fashion, you really have to be on your game,
How,
at all times.
how do you prevent yourself from micromanaging?
So, that is a great question. And I just in the process of wrapping up my MBA right now, and that was a big come to Jesus moment. Like, okay, how do I let some of this stuff go? Well, I write protocols, write procedures, and when I write a work order, for example, on when I'm defining task management, the instructions are there, and so as a step-by-step process, as long as they're following the steps, it's fine. So they get the training initially, and then you just let them go out into the world like you might let your kids out in college. I don't know what that's like yet, but I'm ready.
So it's interesting. So you went back to school. I mean, you have an advanced degree in winemaking and viticulture, and you're just finishing up your MBA.
I graduate next week.
Well, congratulations. What have you
Thank you.
learned?
Yeah,
What have you learned in the
exciting.
MBA program that opened your eyes to the kinds of things you were doing? Because
Mm.
obviously you're a pretty talented guy.
Oh, delegation, just as we're talking about micromanaging there, just moving away from that. I have had micromanagers manage me in the past, and it never feels good. And so if you're ever becoming that, yes, you have to take a step back and let people go, let people thrive. But a lot of it comes with trust, and it's a big job, managing such the quantifiable nature of wine, the dollar amount, and the qualitative measures that go into that wine. We want to be precise, and so precision is important. And so I think it's about developing a good team and trusting them, training them, and just letting them go. But specifically, leadership intelligence was probably one of my favorite classes that I had go on, and that was essentially finding people's personalities and understanding more about your own personality so that you can see your blind spots and make up for them. But then as you engage with people, you understand how they think and almost look at them as a color. Like, for example, I have this on my desk. This is insights, and insights kind of define you as a character and how you think, like a blue, a red, a yellow, and a green. And this is, data is blue. Blue is more data driven. Red is, I just want it done. Yellow is very social, and green is more empathetic, so to speak. And I'm a blue.
I'm not
So I'm very
surprised.
data driven. Yeah, surprise. But yeah, and so that for me was really important to kind of look into what are people's intentions as you're dealing with them, as managing them or having collegial relationships with other winemakers or other, selling people grapes. Like I negotiate grapes for sale. And so, understanding what they need to make them comfortable to do long-term business with us. Yeah. So it's
So I'm just
dynamic.
Dynamic. I'm just curious, just in terms of the business, you got 200 acres. Do you produce all your wines from the 200 acres, or do you buy other grapes as well?
In very recent years, and this last year was the first year where we really delved in and stopped buying grapes. So the long-term plan for the family was to move to estate only, so that we don't have to spend money on buying other people's grapes, that we have the source right in front of us. Let's just utilize that source and we can, profit from it, so to speak.
So pretty much you're sourcing all of your grapes from your own land at the moment.
Yeah, so I think it reads 200 acres kind of in our profile. It's like 200 to 220 in overall acres, but in reality, it's 145 planted acres.
Oh, okay.
And so, with that, sell a little bit of fruit to some high-end clients within Napa Valley and Sonoma. And make what we need to from these vineyards as well.
Wow, and you must have what, 4 or 5 different varietals that you're growing?
I like to tell people I do about 22 different SKUs, so SKUs or items, products. And so we do, I want to say 6 or 7 different Cabernets or Cabernet, Sauvignon Blanc, a Semillon, sparkling Pinot Noir, a Blanc de Noir, 3 Pinot Noirs, red wines, Chardonnay. We have these Pierce's disease varieties called Paysan Noir and Cabernet Noir, which are really great stories on their own. We do single bottlings of those sometimes. And then Malbec and Petit Verdot and Merlot.
That's a lot,
to name a few.
Who are your customers?
So we're nationally distributed. We also export internationally. So all 50 states. And a lot of DTC, direct to consumer, wine club, retail. That's where you're going to get your biggest margins in terms of DTC. Selling full retail. When you sell to a distributor, you may do wholesale prices, so you're maybe giving them a great deal, and then they're moving it for you to a retailer. The retailer has to make a margin on it as well, and so everybody has to get a piece of the pie.
Right. So what is it you think, if you look back on it now, what do you think is unique about you that you bring to the table that's made this whole operation successful?
Well, I've been here for 8 years, and the family has actually owned it for 31 years, but 31 years this last week. Wow. So they are definitely part of that success and having that leadership and understanding of how the industry works. So they kind of created that. I dropped in and back in 2016. But what would make me successful at it? Going back to details, paying attention on a constant basis for everything around, being, I like to say, self-aware of everything that I have to deal with, managing a facility in terms of the infrastructure that we have, as well as looking into the vineyards. And then the winemaking, the blending. I mean, truly, there's so many different dynamics to the job. I think being organized is probably number one.
Right.
So I would say I was really well organized.
And I would say probably very meticulous.
Right. Precise. I like to,
Precise. That would
meticulous is,
not letting anything go by chance. It's going to be planned out and figured out, and you're going to get an expected outcome if you do it the right way.
I like to refer to it as process flow management.
There you go.
I mean, we are in a process, and you're seeing this kind of flow chart, in your head about the way that the grapes come in, how they're growing. And so, yeah, there's definitely a flow chart kind of mentality about how things need to be managed.
It's not like it was in the old days where you just grew grapes and stomped them and put them in a vat and hope for the best. This is a highly scientific, highly engineered venture.
You've got it. I mean, back in the day there, that would have been native yeast fermentations, which I dabble with here. We do native yeast fermentation on most of our white wines, and it could be highly risky. We talk about spoilage yeast, bacteria, oxidation. And so, yeah, making sure none of those things happen. And those are the things that keep me up at night.
There you
Microbes.
That and the glassy wing sharpshooter, right? And Pierce's disease.
Yes.
For those that don't know, it's
yes, and we
one insect that has spreads a virus that kills vines called Pierce's disease, and it's been in California for a while, and it's being kept under control. But if it got out of control, it would wipe out the wine industry.
Right, and so we planted the Paysan Noir and the Cabernet Noir at one of our properties on what we call the island. And the island, it's basically between two creeks, right, kind of an offshoot along the Napa River. And so it's in a riparian zone of Napa Valley, and there's a lot of action from the glassy wing sharpshooter. And so, yeah, they decimated one of our vineyard blocks.
Wow.
Quite frequently, to the point where it's like, okay, well, we got to stop planting this. And so I came in around the time that was being done, and yeah, so now I've seen what Pierce's disease resistant varieties like Paysan Noir and Cabernet Noir do, and so I can successfully say that we are the first winery to commercially make these two Pierce's disease varieties.
Wow.
And now there are other wineries that are making them, but we were the first on the market with the Cabernet Noir and the Paysan Noir. The Texas wine industry is picking it up. I was just looking online. There's another winery in Calistoga that is making some PD varieties.
Are you just
They're very interesting.
You're just using natural rootstock, or are you doing grafting?
It's grafting.
Okay. Interesting. Well, this show's called Listening with Leaders for a reason, and I know that in our Authority Magazine interview, you touched on this, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on the podcast, to talk about how important listening is in your work. So talk to us a little bit about the importance of listening and empathy.
So listening and empathy. Yes, that's the green one I've learned. For people I work with on a daily basis, listening is absolutely critical. And I listen to their concerns, and they have to listen to my instruction on how we make wine here. And I like to tell people that when I'm telling them something important, they should write it down, because some of our instructions in this business are, again, very precise. And so you want to execute exactly the way that we do it. Otherwise, things change significantly with the way that a wine is, the way the wine's life can move on from where they have that effect. And so, yeah, I think that listening is absolutely critical for everyone in this industry. And I, probably in the last 2 years, definitely sit down with my employees to hear them and what they want to improve themselves on in this position, or what are their ultimate goals in life as they move forward in time with their career. And so I try to make their interests come to life with learning this entire process. And usually everyone that we have work here in the cellar, in the lab, I mean, they're getting on the job training, real winemaking on a number of different levels. It's not like there are some wineries that you get stuck on a job and that's your job the entire time. And so I try to get everybody to be exactly like me, to think like me and act like me, in the cellar.
Wow.
So they can make independent decisions because they know the process. They know what to do. And I've demonstrated what they should do. And in the end, they can almost be autonomous if they follow the instructions and listen.
How do you make
That's
sure?
it.
How do you make sure that they're really getting it? You have them repeat back or reflect back what they get, or I mean, what are the processes you use to make sure that you are being heard when you're giving direction?
So as of late, I delegate that down because I have so many other, I've got a cellar master and an enologist where I'll task them with making sure that these things are done now because the scope of my job is so big now that I can't follow through and be that feedback loop micromanager of
Right, we talked
tell
about.
me what I just said, which is also sometimes a very uncomfortable thing to say. I have actually said that to people in the past, and it's like, can you repeat back what I just said? And those are typically the people who aren't writing it down when I'm looking at them saying, how are you going to remember what I just said? Because one of the greatest mentors I ever had would just look at me and say, you should write that down. And so I wrote down everything that she said, and it served me really well. So that every single winemaker that I've ever worked for in my career, when they're talking, I'm writing. And, when I say I'm very data driven, well, I'm going to basic catalog everything that's coming out of their mouth to say, well, we talked about that and it's right here. So, yeah, I think accountability in this industry is important, and being accountable to the wines and the process. Like I said, it's perishable. It's quite important.
What do you do when you run across people who aren't paying attention and aren't listening? And maybe they're employees of yours, or maybe not. Maybe they're just industry people or marketing people or people that you just you run across.
I think it's going to naturally happen, and yeah, you have to have these conversations. I would say the biggest distraction in the workforce right now is phone addiction,
Uh,
and so for some of the interns, so I bring in interns from all over the world really for harvest, and so they come here and I activate the phone locker system, and so I've got phone
phone locker.
lockers because I want them to be so focused on the job that they're not going to miss the beat. Because in the end, we want to be safe too. So we're dealing with a perishable product that's high value. We want them to be safe. And yes, there's not going to be any TikToking, maybe next week. There's not going to be any TikToking while you're putting wine in a barrel or topping a barrel, because there have been incidences where people miss the beat because they're doing just that.
You're not
So I
paying.
think that that's number one. And I give people a pass, and I want people to be connected to their world, specifically if their mom's going to call them from Argentina in an obscure time, or South Africa and so on. I want them to be available for their family member, but then I also want them to be available to the job, which is what we're paying them for.
Yeah, I mean,
That's important.
during the harvest and the crush, not only you're dealing with a perishable commodity, but you're dealing with all kinds of heavy equipment, both moving equipment and the screws and crushers and pumps and tanks, and I mean, a lot of hydraulic pressure. Dangerous operation if you're not paying attention.
It's not just that, Doug. It's these things too. So
Ears.
people are listening to music,
Oh,
and so I have to have policy conversations about headphones. And if you're going to have a headphone, you're going to have one. But if you're driving a forklift, you don't have headphones. You can't hear when somebody screams at you
right.
that they're in front of you. So yeah, it's a very, again, all in the details. And I'm sitting here visualizing this, and I have a crush pad in front of my window here as I'm looking outside as I'm talking to you, and I could see it all go on. So yeah, people should be mindful, people should be aware, people should be safe, and listening, as we're talking about the best ways to listen. Well, it's not to wear your AirPods at work all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I really hadn't thought about that. I'm thinking more about listening in terms of, how people interact with each other. Because in my business, what I find is that when people don't listen, you get a conflict arises or mistakes are made, and emotions.
Correct.
And that gets people riled up, and then now you're in the fight, and it becomes, something that has to be de-escalated. But you're taking it to a whole
Right.
different level when you're thinking about earbuds and phones or eye touches or listen to music, or heaven forbid, watching TikTok when you're running a piece of heavy machinery.
I might agree with Congress on this one.
Yeah. Well, I think the phone locker idea is a really good idea, especially when when you've got a critical time that everybody has to be on board paying attention to what's going on. It's not like you're doing when you're working in the wine industry and you're out on the floor doing the work. There's a lot going on.
You've got it. You've got it.
Where do you see yourself going in the next 10, 15, 20 years? You're still pretty young. How do you see your career?
Geez.
I know you're happy where you are. I'm not saying
you
leave, but maybe the question is, where's the winery going to go?
Gosh, these are all really deep questions. And yeah, so my wife and I, kids, we settled in Calistoga, and our kids go to school here in St. Helena, and we love it here. It's a great community. Napa Valley is a really special place, and quite honestly, I could never see myself leaving Napa Valley. I've now lived here in Napa longer than I've lived in Illinois.
Wow.
And so this is my new home. I've lived in a number of different states and different countries, and this is it. So, and ironically, my folks moved down the street from me, and so now I really can't leave.
All right.
Or I'm going to leave immediately.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah.
Sure, there no snow.
And I guess to answer your other questions, there's 3 generations of family members here at the winery. So my owner, Tom Sr., his kids, Tom Jr. and Katie, and then the grandson, Tommy, is our cellar master.
Oh.
And so, this is a multi-generational family owned and operated winery. And they've owned it, like I said, for 31 years. And so, yeah, in terms of succession planning, they've got it going on. And they're in it for the long haul. And yeah, like I said, we have 145 acres. Do we grow in the future, sell less fruit? Sure, why not? That would be great. The economy is very interesting right now with just consumption, but I think that we're just in a little bit of a bubble of people, trying to be a little bit more healthy, and the boomers getting a little older, drinking less wine. And so, at some point, the younger generation that's, that 23 to 30 will move on from cocktails, beer, etc., and kind of go into a more wine-centric lifestyle. That's typically how it runs, kind of a cyclical consumerism level. And yeah, that's where I think we are.
Really cool.
As a country.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One more question, I'll let you go. What's one thing about yourself? I mean, there's so many unique things about you, but what's one unique thing about yourself that we would never know about unless you revealed it to us?
I speak Spanish.
I saw that on your resume. We know that. We saw, and you speak a little bit.
Okay. Okay, I'll get you. I build things. I build things on the side. I'm, out of wood, decking, and I'm a metalsmith. So yeah, so making rings or, things for my wife when I have time.
Not often. But yeah,
not often, no.
Yeah, I think I saw that. It was in the interview we did that you did some metalworking classes in college.
Oh my God, I've told you that already. Jeez, I play tennis. Really, a lot of tennis.
I'm trying to stop.
And pickleball.
Good for you. Well, Jason, thank you so much for your time today. It's been a great fun and what a really interesting conversation. And I'm so honored to meet somebody like you who's been so successful in the wine business. Thank you so much.